Welcome back into First Take. It was a scary moment for the Warriors last night when Kevin Durant hyperextended his knee in a loss to the Wizards. He had an MRI and results showed a grade 2 MCL sprain and a tibial bone bruise. Here's a statement from the Warriors on Durant. Following reviews of the MRI by the Warriors medical staff, it has been determined that Durant suffered a grade 2 MCL sprain and a tibial bone bruise. He will be out of action indefinitely and will be reevaluated in 4 weeks. He will be, there is no timetable for his return, but it has not been ruled out that he could play again before the end of the season. Now, Durant's injury would obviously open the doors for several other teams, none more than LeBron's squad there in Cleveland. Max, does LeBron have any more excuses if Durant is not 100% moving forward?
No, he didn't even have excuses if Durant was 100%, even though he'd be the underdog, in my opinion. Nope, not according to Stephen A. earlier in the show. And many would think at this point the rosters are equal. Maybe even the Cavs have a better one top to bottom. But no, LeBron wouldn't have any excuses because he's the best player in the world and he's got a squad. And history does not care about the details. They want to know. It wants to know, does the best player in the world have all-star teammates? And if he does, win a championship, period. And this is the rubber match. Cavs lost. Now, history does care about that because they were missing their second and third best players. Then the Cavs won. History will care about that because they came back from a 3-1 hole. This was the matchup, even with Durant. Hold on, LeBron. You have Kyrie and Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith's getting healthy, and you traded for Korver. And then you wanted a backup point guard. You had Dellavedova. You have Darren Williams, who's a much better pick-and-roll player. And you have Derek Williams coming on. And you might get Andrew Bogut, who left, whose absence is an issue on the team against which you're competing for a title, most assume. So there was no excuse for LeBron before the Durant injury. With the Durant injury, absolutely no excuse. I will say this, Stephen A., LeBron doesn't make excuses. When he chirps about what he needs, it's because in his experience, if he doesn't get it. And he knows what he needs, but he chirped, squeaky wheel got the grease. He got what he needed. There are no excuses this year with or without Durant on Golden State.
Well, there were never any excuses. You're right about that. But the reason why it's important and apropos to bring up the word excuses, even though LeBron doesn't make them, is because of all the noise that he created this year. It was LeBron that went on the record and said, our roster is not good enough right now. That was him months ago. It was LeBron that called the Cleveland Cavaliers organization to the carpet to demand that more be done to get him additional help. It was LeBron that Coach Tyronn Lue and ultimately David Griffin had to meet with separately or together. Why? Because they had to address the willingness for LeBron not just to speak, but to speak publicly about what he felt ailed the franchise, essentially throwing others under the bus. I'm not saying that's what he did. I'm saying that's how it was perceived by some critics. So because of that reality, the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers have done what they've done, let's take a moment to put things in perspective, because a lot of times people look out there and they confuse stuff because of the letter that Dan Gilbert wrote to LeBron James years ago, and the fact that no one, including myself, has gotten over that, nor have we forgotten about it. Sometimes we confuse Dan Gilbert with David Griffin, the general manager. Dan Gilbert did write that letter. He was petulant and childish and belligerent in that regard. That is not to be forgotten. But he is the owner. He is in business to finance this franchise, and he has cut the check. That is undeniable. Now let's get to David Griffin. You're the general manager. What did you do last year before y'all won the title? You sat up there and you made sure, it's not just about Love. It was the J.R. Smiths and the Amon Shumperts of the world and all of that stuff. Those things happen. This year, what transpires, Max Kellerman? You needed a shooter. He got Korver once J.R. Smith went down. You need a backup point guard. Ultimately, he gets Darren Williams. You need help on your front line for Tristan Thompson. Ultimately, you got Andrew Bogut. And prior to that, you got Derek Williams. And so when you look at that, knowing that JR is coming back, knowing that Kevin Love is coming back, it's not just about the personnel, meaning LeBron doesn't have an excuse because of that. The reason why the word excuse is apropos here is because you essentially called the organization out. They answered the call. They stepped up and made sure that LeBron has all the requisite pieces that he needs in order to win a chip. They literally have stuffed his own words back in his face and said, now, King James, go win.
I don't see it that
chip.
way. I don't see it that way. LeBron James.
It is that way.
Listen, when he was originally on the Cavs, he wanted him to trade, who was it, J.J. Hickson for Stoudemire, and they wouldn't include Hickson in the deal, and he didn't get Stoudemire, and eventually he's like, look, they're not going to ever put enough around me. I got to get out of here. Goes to Miami. Miami wins a couple championships. Why? Obviously, the big three, and LeBron James is there, but as Shaq says, the role players are who wins championships. Obviously not true, but they put them over the top. The nucleus with LeBron James gets you there, and then you need the right role players to put you over the top. LeBron James's presence allows things like Ray Allen or Darren Williams to sign for less money than they may otherwise get, or to be eager to play on that team because they know with LeBron James they may win a championship. It's compounding advantages. He goes back to Cleveland. He notices again, not quite enough. Black's not quite the right guy. I want a different coach. He gets it. If he doesn't call for it, does he get it? So it's he who is the catalyst, who's making these things happen. He's animating the franchise in that way, including not only chirping for a backup point guard, hey, we need, which they obviously needed and they needed for a while now, but because of his presence there, they're able to get a better backup point guard than they should without really giving up anything for less money than they should get him. That's LeBron calling for it, and that's LeBron's presence enabling it. Tough to give the franchise a ton of credit when that's really about LeBron.
No, it's not. You absolutely have to give the franchise credit because LeBron was saying, I can't do it. You guys need to do your job. He called them out in a way that he would have never called out Pat Riley. He would have never called out Eric Spoelstra and the brain trust that existed in Miami.
They
did
called
out Cleveland. Now, wait a minute. Now, you keep bringing up Cleveland. Remember, David Griffin wasn't there years ago when LeBron had a problem with them. He has nothing to do with that. He came afterwards. And so when you take that into consideration and LeBron's willingness to speak so publicly, all of us support LeBron because we know about his greatness, we know about his class, we know about his resume and his credentials. We get that. But there is no denying that you basically put the onus on them because he's the first to say, yes, I'm King James and I go out there and ball, but I don't run this franchise. I don't cut the checks. I'm not the GM. You guys got to go and do your damn job. That's basically what he said. So if you're willing to point the finger of blame at them, if you're LeBron, when things weren't getting done, then they have every right to sit back now and say, okay, we did what you asked us to do.
But you're calling it blame.
Pieces. Hold on. But I'm saying it matters because you have to take into account the kind of friction that actually existed
but blame
between
would
the
exist.
parties.
I would agree with that if the trade deadline had passed, everything had passed, and then LeBron started complaining. That's blame. What LeBron did was, for lack of a better word, proactive. He looked around at the landscape and said, I need more. They gave Durant, I need more. Then made noise about it and said, do your job. Which they did. Their job was made a lot easier by LeBron James's presence, which is why Darren Williams and others were so easy to acquire. Andrew Bogut, so easy to acquire compared to other teams who I'm sure would like to add those players for next to nothing. So LeBron is there throwing down the gauntlet, and then he's making it easier for them to do their jobs. That's not about blame. That's about lighting a fire under people to say, this is what we need. He's not blaming anyone. He got the job done.
It's about blame because it's something he never did before.
He didn't need it.
He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that before in Cleveland. He wouldn't do that before Miami. And he had issues with Miami's unwillingness to spend that time so they wouldn't trigger larger luxury tax dollars. He wasn't as loquacious and vociferous and outspoken with what he was saying in the past compared to what he is now in Cleveland. That's the only reason why I throw the word blame out there, because it deviates from the kind of character he would usually put on display. He's coming into his own at those times.
As a player and as a star, he's come into his own, and he's making demands in full bloom as a player and as a star that he may not have made earlier. But if he didn't make those demands, Stephen A., would they have Darren Williams and Andrew Bogut right now?
They might, because those guys were available off waivers. So they might have it. You might have a bigger point if they traded for them or something, because they may not have done that. But the fact that those guys were available, it ain't a stretch to say that they probably would have grabbed them anyway.
Because LeBron's on the team, that's true.
I'm only saying again, the point is take into consideration the tension that has existed even upon his return in Cleveland. That's the only reason I use the word blame, nothing else.
So LeBron has needs. They appear to be met. So does Phil Jackson. Shocking, he wants to bring back the triangle. Most think it's outdated.